I didn't ruin my life in one dramatic moment. There was no explosion. No screaming goodbye. No final door slammed in anger. I ruined it by agreeing. By saying okay when my chest tightened. By nodding when my instincts whispered no. By staying quiet when silence felt safer than honesty. That's how it happened. Slowly. Respectably. Invisibly. Most people think regret arrives loudly, like a siren. But for me, it arrived softly, like furniture you stop noticing after years of living around it. It blended in. It became normal. If you had met me back then, you would thought I was doing fine. A stable job. A relationship that looked calm from the outside. A routine that worked. I wasn't miserable. That was the dangerous part. I was just absent. I learned early how to disappear without leaving. I grew up believing that the worst thing you could be was difficult. My parents didn't say it outright, but I absorbed it anyway. Be easy. Be grateful. Don't ask for too much. Don't make people uncomfortable with your feelings. So I trained myself to accept lives that didn't fit. The first time I ignored myself, I told myself it was maturity. The second time, responsibility. The third time, love. After that, I stopped naming it at all. I said yes to a career I didn't hate but never loved. I said yes to a relationship that felt safe but never alive. I said yes to a city that felt practical but never like home. Every choice made sense on paper. That's how I justified it. People praised me for being grounded. Reasonable. Reliable. I became the person others leaned on, the calm one, the stable one, the one who never made waves. Inside, something kept shrinking. Not breaking. Shrinking. There's a difference. Breaking hurts. Shrinking goes unnoticed. At night, I lay awake feeling like I was late for something, but I couldn't remember where I was supposed to be. That feeling followed me for years, a constant low-level anxiety, like missing an exit and continuing to drive, telling yourself you'll turn around later. Later became a decade. The relationship was the hardest part to admit. From the outside, it looked good. We were kind to each other. We didn't fight much. We knew each other's routines, favorite foods, sleep schedules. We functioned. But love isn't supposed to feel like shared maintenance. I don't blame her. She didn't trap me. I stayed because leaving would be required explaining something I couldn't articulate. How do you tell someone, you're not wrong for me, this life is, so I stayed. And she stayed. And time passed. I became very good at performing contentment. I smiled in the right places. I answered good automatically when people asked how I was. I believed my own performance most days. But sometimes, usually late at night, I would imagine a different version of myself. Not richer. Not more successful. Just, awake. That version felt like a stranger I used to know. The breakdown didn't come as a collapse. It came as clarity. One ordinary morning, I was standing in the kitchen, waiting for the coffee machine to finish its familiar mechanical hum, when a thought entered my mind with terrifying calm. If this is the rest of my life, I will survive it. Not enjoy it. Not grow through it. Just survive. Something about that word landed wrong. Survive wasn't supposed to be the goal. I stared at my reflection in the dark window and realized something that scared me more than failure ever had. Nothing in my life was technically wrong, and yet it was all wrong for me. That's when the panic started. Quiet at first. A tightening in my chest that wouldn't release. A constant awareness of time, ticking forward without asking my permission. I started noticing how many days passed without memory. How many conversations blurred together. How often I felt like a guest in my own routine. I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to keep living this version of my life. That distinction mattered. For months, I carried that realization alone. I couldn't share it without detonating everything. And maybe that's why I didn't. I kept choosing the path that required less immediate damage, ignoring the long-term erosion. Until one night, lying beside someone who trusted me, I understood something brutal: staying was also a choice. And it was costing me myself. The guilt was suffocating. Leaving meant hurting people. Staying meant erasing myself. There was no option without blood on it, just different kinds. That's when I started planning an exit no one would see coming. Not a disappearance in the dramatic sense. No vanishing into the night. Something quieter. Something that looked like adjustment, not escape. I began detaching in small ways. Saving money without explanation. Declining future plans. Letting emotional distance grow naturally, like a plant I stopped watering. I told myself I was protecting everyone. That if I left gently enough, no one would bleed too much. That was a lie I needed to believe. What I didn't expect was how lonely it would feel to prepare to leave your own life while still living inside it. Every shared meal felt like borrowed time. Every laugh carried a countdown. I was both present and already gone. And the strangest part, no one noticed. That hurt more than I expected. It confirmed my darkest fear: I was replaceable. Not in a cruel way, just in the quiet, factual sense. The world wouldn't stop. It would adjust. That realization gave me permission I didn't know I was waiting for. The night I finally decided, there was no drama. No tears. Just a deep, steady calm that settled into my bones. I packed only what mattered. Left nothing that would invite questions. I didn't write a letter. I didn't owe anyone an explanation I wasn't ready to give. I owed myself a chance to meet the person I might have been. When I closed the door behind me, I expected fear. What I felt instead was grief, not for what I was losing, but for how long it took me to leave. Starting over is a beautiful idea when you don't imagine the silence that comes with it. The first weeks felt unreal, like I was living inside a paused frame. I woke up in unfamiliar rooms, ate meals alone, walked streets where no one recognized me. There was no one to ask where I was going or when I'd be back. No one waiting. No one watching. Freedom tasted thin at first. I expected relief to rush in immediately, like air after holding your breath too long. Instead, there was a hollow calm, the kind you feel after a storm has passed and you're left standing among the wreckage, unsure what exactly survived. I told myself this was normal. That rebuilding takes time. That emptiness was just unused space waiting to be filled. But space echoes when you're alone with yourself. I had removed the structure that defined me for years. My days were no longer measured by shared routines or obligations. I could sleep when I wanted, eat when I wanted, go where I wanted. No one needed updates. No one depended on my presence. And slowly, something uncomfortable surfaced. Without witnesses, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I realized how much of my identity had been shaped by being needed. By being reliable. By being the person others could count on. I had confused usefulness with meaning. Now, without that role, I felt unanchored. I tried filling the void the obvious ways. New habits. New goals. New people. I told myself I was exploring, rediscovering, reinventing. But every conversation felt strangely shallow. Not because the people were uninteresting, because I was hiding. I couldn't tell them who I really was without explaining where I came from. And I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. I left, sounded selfish. I escaped, sounded dramatic. I abandoned a life that didn't fit, sounded like an excuse. So I said vague things. Half-truths. Safe summaries. I became good at being temporary. Temporary apartments. Temporary friendships. Temporary plans. I learned the art of not leaving fingerprints on anything. It felt safer that way. At night, the guilt returned. Not as regret as responsibility. I replayed moments I had left behind. Small details that hadn't mattered at the time. A question I avoided answering. A look I didn't explain. A future conversation that would now never happen. I wondered if I had been brave or just cowardly in a more socially acceptable direction. The truth sat somewhere in between. There were moments of joy, too. Real ones. Walking through a city where no one knew my past. Ordering food without compromise. Making decisions based purely on instinct. Those moments felt like sunlight through cracks in a wall. But sunlight doesn't rebuild walls. The loneliness wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It hummed quietly in the background, constant and patient. I could ignore it during the day. At night, it waited for me. That's when the thoughts came. What if the life I left was the only one where I mattered to someone? What if meaning isn't found its built slowly, and I destroyed the foundation? What if I mistook discomfort for destiny? Calling these questions didn't have answers. They circled endlessly. I realized something uncomfortable: escaping a life doesn't automatically create a better one. It just gives you the chance to try and the responsibility if you fail. No one warns you about that part. About how terrifying it is to own your choices completely, without anyone else to blame. When things went wrong now, there was no partner to argue with, no system to rebel against. Just me, facing the consequences of freedom. And yet, even on the hardest nights, I didn't want to go back. That surprised me. I missed people. I missed familiarity. I missed being known. But I didn't miss the version of myself I had been. That person had been slowly suffocating. Quietly. Politely. I understood then that regret comes in layers. I regretted the pain I caused. I regretted the years I lost. But I didn't regret choosing myself. I regretted how long I waited. One evening, sitting alone in a rented room, I caught my reflection again, older now, more tired, but clearer. For the first time, I didn't look away. I asked myself a question I had avoided for years: if no one ever forgives you for this, can you still live with it? The answer came slowly. Uneasily. Yes. Because staying would be meant never forgiving myself. That realization didn't bring peace. It brought acceptance. And acceptance, I learned, is quieter than happiness but stronger than fear. I stopped running from the discomfort. I let the loneliness teach me instead of punishing me. I learned to sit with myself without distraction. To listen without immediately judging. I wasn't rebuilding a perfect life. I was rebuilding an honest one. And honesty hurts before it heals. The strange thing about disappearing is that eventually, you have to reappear somewhere, even if only to yourself. Months passed. Then more. Time stopped feeling like an enemy chasing me and started feeling like a companion walking beside me. Not kind, not cruel, just honest. It showed me exactly where I was standing, without commentary. I stopped pretending that starting over meant becoming someone new. That fantasy faded quietly. You don't shed a life like a skin. You carry it with you, folded neatly, tucked into places you don't always check. The memories didn't haunt me the way I expected. They visited. Sometimes gently, sometimes sharply, but never with the intention to destroy. They just wanted to be acknowledged. I learned that guilt doesn't disappear when you justify your reasons. It softens only when you accept responsibility without self-punishment. I hurt people. I ended a version of the future that others believed in. That truth didn't change just because my intentions were sincere. But neither did the truth that staying would be killed something inside me slowly enough for no one to notice. There's a particular sadness that comes from knowing you did the right thing too late. It's not dramatic. It doesn't ask for sympathy. It just sits with you, reminding you that timing is part of morality. I started building again, not quickly, not impressively. Piece by piece. A routine chosen consciously, not inherited. Work that didn't define me, but didn't erase me either. Relationships formed slowly, without urgency, without promises I wasn't ready to keep. For the first time, I allowed myself to be seen imperfectly. I stopped explaining my past unless someone truly asked. I stopped compressing my story into something palatable. If people stayed curious, I stayed open. If they drifted away, I let them. That was new for me. I realized how much energy I used to spend managing other people's comfort. How often I traded my truth for harmony. Freedom, it turns out, isn't loud rebellion, it's quiet alignment. There were still nights when I wondered who I would be if I had chosen differently earlier. If I had spoken sooner. Left sooner. Risked sooner. That version of me felt like a parallel life running just out of reach. But I stopped chasing ghosts. Because here's what no one tells you about regret, it doesn't demand that you undo the past. It demands that you stop repeating it. The real second chance wasn't the move, or the disappearance, or the new city. It was learning to listen to discomfort before it turned into despair. To treat that quiet internal resistance as information, not weakness. I learned to pause when something felt wrong, even if it looked right. To ask myself questions that didn't have easy answers. To disappoint people early instead of betraying myself slowly. That didn't make life easier. It made it real. Sometimes I imagine running into someone from my old life. I imagine the questions they'd ask, the explanations I might offer. In those imagined conversations, I no longer defend myself. I simply say, I didn't know how to live honestly back then. Now I'm learning. And that feels enough. If you're listening to this and wondering whether you're trapped in the wrong life, here's the truth I wish someone had told me sooner: you don't need a catastrophe to justify change. You don't need permission to listen to yourself. And staying quiet to keep the peace can be its own kind of violence. Leaving doesn't make you brave by default. Staying doesn't make you loyal by default. What matters is whether you're awake inside your choices. I didn't find happiness waiting for me on the other side. I found responsibility. And strangely, that was better. Because responsibility means the life I'm living now is actually mine. I chose the wrong life once not because I was weak, but because I was afraid of hurting others. This time, I chose honesty. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. And if there's a lesson in all of this, it's not that you should leave everything behind, it's that you should never abandon yourself so quietly that you forget when it happened.